Hey, hello there. Welcome to Pedal to the Metal Muscle Car Performance. Today I'm going to show you a really amazing and very unique car. The car that we present to you here is a very rare Plymouth Roadrunner from 1970. Well, that's special, but what's really special about this car is that it's a 440 six-pack, which means it was equipped with the 440 big block and the 3x2 Holley carburetor setup. But it's also a 4-speed car, and what makes it even more amazing is that it's also got the drag pack rear axle with the 410 gears, which means that when this car was produced, it was probably built for drag racing purposes because it's got everything that it needs to be fast on the drag strip. This car has been completely rotisserie restored in our shop, which means that it had the complete car disassembled. Really every nut and bolt was taken apart of this car. Then it was acid dipped. The body, the complete body, and all the components on the car were acid dipped, which means that all the rust and all the dirt and sand that had built up in the car for more than 50 years was removed. Then we were left with a naked body, floor and chassis, and all the other components, and then we started the restoration process of this car. And not only that, but we also rebuilt the original, completely numbers matching drivetrain, which means the car is already rare, but it's even more rare because it's got the factory original motor still inside, the factory original 4-speed transmission, and also the Dana 60 rear axle with the 410 gears. Which makes it even more amazing. And everything was rebuilt. That means we took everything apart, and all the components on this car were meticulously restored. We paid especially great detail to the engine because it's a 440 six-pack, that we made sure that everything inside the motor was also built back to almost original factory specifications. The only luxury that we made for the engine was a bit more grumpy camshaft, because the 440 six-pack camshafts were not really special. They made a lot of power, but in the higher revs they were not that great. So we put in a bit more, juicy camshaft to make the engine a bit more powerful. It's estimated right now to have around 425 horsepower, which is very much for these original engines. And in this setup, this car was probably also faster than the even more rare Hemi cars. Because the engine was a little bit lighter, and the combination of the six-pack engine and the 410 geared rear axle probably killed most Hemi cars on the road back in 1970. Well, as you can see here, the original engine, which was completely rebuilt, also still has all the original components, which means that these hoses are original Chrysler pieces. The ignition system is the original one, with of course date coded plug wires. The steering pump was fully rebuilt. The exhaust manifolds on the engine are also the real original ones. All the numbers on them, the date casting codes and everything are the correct ones. Up until the rear, until the window wiper motor, that was also restored. It's the original one. All the date codes are correct. The brake system, this car was a drum brake car, which for drag racing was not that bad because drum brakes are really good in fast braking. You only get some fading after a long time, but seeing this car was not raced on a normal track, it was just perfect equipped for drag race purposes. I must say, we think the car probably never saw any drag racing, because why? It's still the original motor, the original transmission, and even the Dana 60 rear axle there. Because normally in drag racing, these components are, after a couple of races, they fall apart, and you have problems. And this car still has everything original in it, so it was probably not really raced on a drag strip, but probably used on the street. What you can also see on this car is that it has the air grabber intake system, which is a system that grabs air, it says already, air grabber, from the outside. In the movie earlier you saw the hood open, which is operated by a vacuum system, and then it brings the air through this tunnel into the air filter, which brings air into the motor, and that combined with fuel makes horsepower. And many people say that these systems maybe only bring 5 to 10 horsepower, but believe me, when it's a cold morning, it's cold weather, there's lots of oxygen in the air. If you open up this air grabber hood and you put the pedal to the metal, then this car really hauls ass. And we estimate that it really brings 20 to 25 horsepower more than without this system on it. So that makes this car truly amazing. Well, as you can see, all the rest of the details are all brand new. Everything is restored. It's got the correct clips, it's got the correct rubbers. The full air grabber system was completely rebuilt with all the operating systems. So everything here is truly amazing. Even the original radiator is still in the car. The paint on this car, well, it's hard to see that on the video probably, but it's stunning. I can really honestly say this is probably one of the best cars we ever did in the paint department, because it's really laser straight, and the paint has a very deep shine. It was hand polished. I think hundreds of man hours were invested in polishing up the car to get this great piano style finish. And if you go to the website, you can also see that the outside of the car is, well, pretty spectacular, but underneath the car is just as spectacular. It's got the same paint underneath the car. It was also highly polished underneath, so it's just plain amazing. Well, once that was all done and the car was painted, which was done with several layers of DuPont paint, it's factory original ivy green F8 coated color. Many layers of blank lacquer were also applied on this car, and as I already stated, then it was polished to the best possible shine that you could have. Of course, all the wiring inside the car was also restored meticulously into factory original specs, and same goes for just about anything on this car. The exhaust system underneath, all the brake lines, the fuel lines, everything was done in the correct way. So what you see here is truly how the car probably came out of the showroom back in 1970 when it was ordered by its first owner, which makes it pretty special. Well, just again to show you how well this car was restored, you can see also the trunk area of this car. All Chryslers from the factory, and especially Plymouth and Dodges, had painted trunks. Well, maybe not as great as in this car, because this car really has a high shiny trunk area, but all the factory cars were painted inside. You can also see that we reproduced the anti-sound coating that's on the inside of the quarter panels. You have to look over there to see it. And also on the other side, because the quarter panels of these cars were always bad, we had to replace them. But we meticulously tried to make the coating on them as original as possible. As you can also see, it's got the original spare, which is not in the car at the moment because of, well, it's a little bit lighter this way, but the jack and all the components that you need to jack up the car are still also all factory original pieces. So you can just see that this car is absolutely amazing in its overall quality. Well, we're going to take this baby out for a small drive, just to show you how great this car is. And in the meantime, you can have a look at the interior of this car, which is also pretty amazing and fully restored. It's got, of course, the Hurst, famous Hurst pistol grip shifter, which all these cars had, and especially the 4-speed cars. It's got the rally steering wheel, the wood grain steering wheel, which looks pretty amazing in these cars. And of course, the world famous beep beep horn is also in this car. So let's take her out for a small spin. Truly drives really smooth. Boy, man, this is a true genuine muscle car. And keep in mind that 425 horsepower was pretty amazing in the 70s. I mean, there wasn't even a Ferrari back then that had that same performance, or even a Porsche or whatever kind of car. It was really the time where the great American muscle cars were about the fastest and most powerful cars around in the world. But also, if you want to drive slow, just like cruising, no problem. Just put the car in 3rd or 4th gear and she will drive, well, perfectly. You can go shopping with it, go get an ice cream in the city, no problem at all. But if you go on the highway and you put the pedal to the metal, and those 6-pack intake and 3 double carbs, it just feels like a turbo comes in all of a sudden, and the car just goes, and it just doesn't stop anymore until it redlines, which is pretty amazing. Roadrunner was built on the B-body chassis. The B-body was a chassis that Chrysler also used for the Dodges, like the Dodge Charger, which has the same body. The same underside as this car. The body was different. But also the Plymouth GTX, which was a luxury version of the Roadrunner. The Roadrunner was a really low-budgeted car that was meant for young people to be able to buy a real performance car for a very special price. It was basically delivered with the 383 4-barrel engine, which made around 330 horsepower. Then it came only with either the 446-pack or with the Hemi. Well, if you have a 1970 Hemi, that is really a pretty amazing car, because there were only a handful of these made. But well below that was the 446-pack, and I truly must say, as a Mopar fan, as a Mopar guy, that the 446-pack probably is the better motor. It's more powerful, it's much lighter than the Hemi, and it makes this car perform just pretty well. And just as I just explained, inside the car you could really get a kick in the butt when these 3 double carburetors kick in. The car is just, all in all, just a great iconic car. We also showed you some interior features, which we're going to show you just a little bit more. And one of the features, of course, was because it was a low option car, they were mostly sold with a bench seat. So this car is also a bench seat car, but it's just a very special feeling to sit in a bench seat drag race car with a 4-speed manual shifter and a big engine. And this combined with the Dana 60 rear axle and the 410 gears makes this car perform from 0 to 60 in pretty amazing times. I guess it's going to be around, well, 5.5 to 6 seconds to go to 0 to 60 miles. Top speed, I can't really tell you. I've never driven this car top speed, but it must be far above the 160 mile per hour limit. We're going to conclude this video by saying that besides the fact that this car is completely original, there is also proof of that, being that we have the documentation for it. Like, it's got the factory original build sheet. In fact, I think there were even 2 copies of that. There's a factory original fender tag is still there, and all the body fin numbers are also still in place in this car. Well, all other information you can find also on our website. Lots of pictures there and a full description. Of course, the price of the car is there as well, which you can find on the www.pttmgarage.com. We thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe we can see you later. Thank you.